want to let you all know I already had the question of if your audio and your video is turned off. Yes, it is. We have the capability that we went ahead and disabled that. So you do have the capability to chat, but we have turned off all your other functions. So do not be alarmed if you are not able to say anything or if you see that your mic is not available. That has been disabled. But this will be a very interactive session where we want everybody to participate in the chat function. So today we are going over online course building basics. Our webinars up to this point have really discussed how to facilitate an engaging online session through the use of different activities that you can integrate through web tools. And also with Mr. Rosenkrantz's session last week, we really talked about facilitating or managing the online course. But we really haven't got into what it takes to actually build an online course, which is something that I know a lot of people who are new to this genre or this modality really are looking to find out. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully you all got the email with your link for the nice little guide or job aid that I gave you. And this is going to take a deeper dive than what we'll have time to discuss today and hopefully answer a few more of your questions that we may not be able to address during the session. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first, I want to introduce myself and our outstanding online learning team. So I am Monica Garcia. I'm the online learning course director here at the Keesler Faculty Development Flight. And my background is that I oversee our online courses such as the IDLE course and AOL, and we'll be talking about those here at the end of the session. A little bit about my background. I've been doing online learning for about 4 years now, and I'm actually finishing up this in August. Woo-hoo, I'll be done. My master's in learning design and technology, which focuses on online course development through Purdue University. Go Boilermakers. With me today is my awesome colleagues and our, as I like to call, the online learning dream team, which is Ms. Brittany Hall and Mr. Frank Rosenkrantz, who you'll see in the chat session as I'm going through my lesson. So we have questions that are put throughout the session. Go ahead and throw your answers into the chat. A lot of times these discussions can get really robust and we have some great conversation going off on the sideline. And so Ms. Hall and Mr. Rosenkrantz will address any questions that you have throughout the session. So please feel free to type in anything you'd like to add to the discussion, anything that you want to contribute, or any questions you have, and we'll be able to address them for you in that chat box. Again, your microphone and your webcam have been disabled for this session, so don't be alarmed if you don't have that available. So this session is, again, we're talking about online course building basics. So if you have some experience with this, we're not going to go too advanced. We're really going to focus on what it takes for the design and the development of an online course. What components do we need to look at? First, we're going to look at course planning. Course planning is an extremely important part of your online course development. So what elements are included in that? Then we're going to look at your course framework, basically the organization of your course. It's the skeleton. And then finally, we're going to look at what you need to include when you're constructing a course, what your content layout should look like, as well as when you're creating a lesson specifically. So let's dive into today's session. So course planning. Course planning is probably one of your most important elements when you are going into online course development. This is something that is so vitally important to ensure that you get everything that you need into your course. And a lot of times people think when you go into online course development, you're going to dive straight into getting into your learning management system and you're developing there. But that's not the case. A large part of your development is going to take place outside of the learning management system, and a lot of your planning is going to need to happen maybe on something as simple as a spreadsheet, but it helps you get a clear picture of what's going into your course. So successful courses definitely test 1 2. Can you all hear me? Someone said I'm losing audio. Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to continue then. So a course plan is really important, and also keep in mind as you are planning your course that it's going to continually revise. So you are going to continually change things up. You're going to have to make sure that you look at your flow of your course. You're going to look at what's going to be included, and don't be afraid if you have to reorganize things, because that's going to happen quite often. It is definitely essential to your online course development because it's going to allow you to demonstrate your alignment and determine a course path. So let's go on to what is included in your course plan. The first thing that you want to look at is your course goals. This is and you see we have course goals and course objectives. These are very different things. So your course goals are really more broad. Your goals are going to reflect some of those that are identified for your department or program. And so your course goal should in some way contribute to your organization or your program goals. They also are going to project what your overall learning outcomes are. They're usually broad, but in order to make sure that they are achievable, you want to really look at what it is you are trying to achieve. So there's some questions that you want to look at to ensure that you are outlining some really attainable goals. So what do you want your students to remember? If your student 5-10 years down the line, what is it that you want your students to remember about the course? How should taking your course change your students? What kind of things should they be taking away? What skills do you want your students to attain from your course? And how does this course relate to other courses in the discipline? Which is something that's really important, especially in our area of technical training. How is this course going to benefit our students in relation to maybe other courses in the pipeline? So those are the types of course goals that you want to look at. So then course objectives. With your course objectives, this is something that you might have heard of as a terminal objective. Your terminal objectives are those overall objectives that are going to assist your students in meeting the requirements for the course. So again, these need to be measurable statements. They may need to be something that define your specific skills, knowledge, and attitudes that learners are going to need to demonstrate at the end of the course. So I like to use an acronym, or there's an acronym that you can remember when you are looking at your terminal objectives. So you want them to be specific, so define your goal and methods clearly. You want them to be measurable, so how are we going to be able to measure that our students have met that knowledge? They should be attainable. Make sure they are realistic. They must also address the stated needs. So what are the results? What is your goal? This should match your objectives should ensure that they are matching the goals of the course. And finally, look at the start and finish time for your objectives. So when this is very simple, when we're developing our course documents, you look at our course charts and the time on task. That's what we're looking at. How long is it going to take for our students to achieve this? So the third thing that we look at when we are doing our course planning is our target audience. You want to recognize who your students are. It's very easy for us to write ourselves and for us to write and develop courses for how we know that we learn. However, how you learn and the way that you appreciate things and understand things may not be the same for your students. So understand who it is that you're developing for, and that can drive the entire plan for your course. So you go from course planning, you've got everything outlined, you know what you want to include. So now let's look at our course framework. So your teaching and learning frameworks, they're research-informed models for course design that help instructors align learning goals with classroom activities, create motivating and inclusive environments, and integrate assessment into learning. So let me ask you all of this. How many of you have been in a course where you did not feel that what you were doing was meeting the requirements of the course? Or I should say, there were objectives put out, but the assignments that you were doing or the assessments, they didn't feel like they were matching up. Has anyone felt that? Like you've gone through an online course where you were just like, why does this feel so much more difficult than what they said we were going to do? Or this is way too easy. This just does not feel like this is the way that it should be. I see a lot of yeses. And in-person courses. And again, a lot of what we're talking about here is definitely applicable to in-resident courses. However, what I'm talking about is so important for online because it's going to be a little more difficult when you go into that implementation and you're trying out your course and you're seeing how everything flows. So having that before you go into your learning management system is so important. You want to make sure that everything is lined up. So frameworks like backward design serve as like a map. So your course framework is going to be your course map. It's going to outline what it is that you're going to be doing, or like I keep liking to say, your course flow on how your course is going to look, essentially, once you get into that online platform. The other important thing about frameworks is they scaffold. Who in here has heard of the term scaffolding? And I know I have a picture of scaffolding on the screen, but in terms of teaching and learning, scaffolding is really important. So scaffolding is where we take topics and they build on one another. And it's vitally important when it comes to teaching and learning because you want to ensure that you are taking your different topics and connecting them to one another. So in teaching and learning frameworks, they provide scaffolded, diverse approaches that can help students form knowledge structures, and it helps to be organized as you're going through the development process. One of the biggest parts of your framework is course alignment. So if you've been through the EIDL course, you know all about course alignments because we teach this. A lot of that course is really centered around alignment. And this is where all of your learning objectives and your learning assessments and your instructional strategies are all, it shows that they are all aligned with one another. So your learning objectives, especially with your proficiency code levels, you want to make sure that all of these are written to the appropriate proficiency code level or learning level that is determined when we outline our tasks. So with your learning objectives, these are what we call enabling. So your course objectives are your terminal objectives, and then your learning objectives are those objectives that are going to identify how the student is going to be able to do that specific task at the end of the lesson. And each of those tasks are going to support those terminal objectives. So in order to do that, we have to ensure that our learning assessments are the right level to meet those learning objectives and are measuring them appropriately. And then finally, our instructional strategies. We want to ensure that our instructional strategies or our activities are the appropriate level, or they are appropriate to meet the same level as our assessments and also our learning objectives. When you're outlining your framework, this will help you ensure that all of this is aligned appropriately and gives you a clear picture of what it is that you're going to be putting into your course. So why is alignment important? Why do you guys think alignment is important in a course? Throw it in the chat. Anybody? Anyone else? Measure, match the objective? Yes. Do you think it could help motivation? Do you think it could help with like student motivation? Do you think it could help them find meaning in the content? Help student organize learning in their head? Yes. Great, Mark. Yes, the task should fulfill what our customer is wanting. Absolutely. Meeting the needs of the learner. Less likely to cause confusion while learning. Yes. So all of this is great points. We want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our learner and help them make it something the student will want to learn. Help them find meaning in the content, because if there's a lot of confusion and they're not sure what it is that they're supposed to be learning, why are you going to want to stay in the course and continue on, right? Why this matters for the student? Yes, the why question. And a lot of times we're saying, why are they asking why? Because people want to know why they're learning something. It's relevant. How is it relevant to their lives? Why does this matter to me? That's the important question. Okay, so now we go to course structure. And Brittany also talks about how the Air Force structure, it's good to develop that learning standard, which is exactly what I'm going to be getting into here as we go into this next section. So the course structure refers to the choice of topics and organization and sequencing of our course content. So a lot of times when it comes to our topics, we're already kind of have those put forth by us with our course training standard and our specialty training standards that are either dictated by our career fields or that are given to us as, important topics when we're developing a course. So in faculty development, we use a course training standard and then determine which topics or tasks need to be taught in the course. So that is going to start dictating what our course structure is. Now, as we are developing our structure, this is the organization of our course. So if you're looking at this in the online realm, as you start outlining your course, think about it in terms and start picturing how you would want the course to be structured if you're looking at it in a learning management system. So if you logged into Blackboard and your student go into your course, what is the flow? What order do you want them to learn these topics? Some questions that we have are, how do you see the story of the course unfolding? I love that, because what if, your course is a story? It's, giving you the basic information up front, the background information, and then you're building on that as you move through the course. And then at the end with, the final test or the capstone, that's the big finale. And so you want to ensure that your course structure gives that story and that good flow. The other thing that you want to look at is, does the narrative and the informational hierarchy of each component look like what the students need to learn first in order to understand more complex or advanced topics later? A lot of our courses in technical training are actually structured this way. We do simple to complex, known to unknown. So we really provide that foundation and then build on it later. And think about that in terms of how you want your course to look and how you want your students to be learning that information. Look at your central themes, and then also how will your learners ask questions, seek answers, and provide feedback so that you can implement remedial or corrective action later. So basically what this is saying is put things into your course that will allow students to provide feedback to the course so it can help you improve your course later. That's why it's sensible and flexible. So this is an iterative process, meaning that things are going to change. Your course is going to change. Don't be afraid to make changes. One example right now is we're in the process of developing a course where I had the content laid out in a way I'm like, yeah, this works. And then I started to look at it again. And I'm like, you know what? And then we got input from other people. And I'm like, you know what? We can totally move these objectives to this unit. We can totally hack this unit because we don't need that. We're just going to have this as a flow. We'll do it this way. Things are going to change, and you're going to start being able to see that clear picture and clear overview of a course. And that's where your organization and sequencing come in. So that's going to help you start determining your course outline. So when you are looking at your course outline, you're going to want to look at your learning outcomes. What do students need to know at each point? How are you going to incrementally reach each of your course learning objectives? So what are you going to do in order to get your students to the point that they need to be? How will your learning objectives be assessed or observed? That's a key component in online learning. Is a lot of times, and we see this in EIDL as part of our assessments, we have activities where we ask students to look at different activities that we're going to measure our students with. But a lot of times what we see is that these assessments cannot be observed online. Remember, an objective is observable and measurable. So think about when you're developing your assessments, how can you see your students do that task? Then what kind of activities are you going to allow learners to practice and gain? And also remember, both your assessments and activities, you can add else within your course that don't necessarily need a grade, but it allows your students to practice the knowledge. You know, a lot of times I'll use a tool called Edpuzzle, which is where you can find videos or upload those and then build questions into the videos. So it allows your students to engage with the video, but also ensures that they're watching and test their knowledge. And George makes a great point. You should use a variety of assessments as well. So just put in multiple choice quizzes for everything. Try and do different things that kind of keep them guessing. And yes, definitely formative and summative. So your formative assessments are those that kind of test their knowledge throughout, and then your summative, just think summary. It's tests everything cumulatively. And then finally, your instructional material. This is going to go in your order. You're going to determine your outcomes, then you're going to figure out your assessments, how you're going to measure those outcomes, then what types of activities you're going to deliver that information. And then finally, you're going to determine what kinds of learning materials and tools that learners are going to need to learn the information. How are you going to deliver that material? So those are the kinds of things that you want to think about as you're going through this outline process. One way that I like to do this when I am outlining my course is I quite literally use what is called a course alignment tool. And again, in EIDL we introduce this tool, and it's quite literally a spreadsheet, and it has a title with my units, a title with my objectives, a column for my proficiency codes, a column for my activities, and a column for my assessments. And that allows me to see how everything is aligned together and which objectives are going to be under which topics. And then it will see how everything is listed together. And it's a great and easy way for you to outline your course to see what is working and what is not. So you've outlined you've planned your course out, you've got your course outline, you know everything that you want to put in your course. Now it's time to start building. So once you've done all of that we've talked about should happen outside of the learning management system. So you want to make sure that you are everything that you want to put in your course, even write out your instructions of how you think an assessment should occur. Sam makes a great point. If able, make the best assessments will mimic what students will see in the application of materials, and that's very true. You want to try and have assessments that really mimic what they're going to be doing in the real world. So sometimes that's difficult online, but you can still find ways to have them apply that information. So let's talk construction. Constructing a course. So in the chat, give me a word when you think constructing a course. We had a lot of words at the front ends where people put frustrating, complicated, design, but when it comes to the actual building in a learning management system, throw a word in the chat that comes to mind when you think constructing a course. We have organization, compatibility, collaborative, organized, outlined, variety, focused. A lot of good words up here. Constraints. Okay, that's an interesting one. Solving, student-centered. I'm glad George brought up student-centered. Building blocks. Yes. Okay, so what I do love about LMSs is they have a lot of tools for us. In this situation, let's assume that you already have a learning management system picked out. Typically across the Air Force and the agencies and the people that I've seen have signed up for this, you're either using Blackboard, Canvas with maybe some Moodle thrown in there. So all of these learning management systems are going to play a large role in how you plan for your course and also construct it. So when you are establishing your framework, knowing the tool that you have is going to be pretty important, because if you are familiar with your tool, you're going to be able to kind of envision how you're going to structure it. But as you're getting into that construction piece though, you also want to start thinking about the different kind of content that you're going to use. So when you're outlining your course, you want to you're thinking about your activities, but as you're constructing, now you're thinking about what types of instructional materials, what supporting content am I going to use? How am I going to demonstrate certain things? So that's when you start getting into your multimedia. So before you actually start outlining, you're going to want to start collecting your content or your instructional materials. So the typical ones that are used are video content, screencasts, text, and slides. Your video content, as I mentioned, I use Edpuzzle. We love to use YouTube videos. That's a pretty common thing for what you can incorporate into your course. And it's also a great way of providing a demonstration in the online environment. So someone mentioned earlier in the chat, you want to find activities where students will be able to demonstrate what they're going to be doing in the real world. So video might be a great way to do that. It might be you recording yourself, finding videos that are already out there, or even having the students video themselves of doing something is another way that you can do it. Screencasts are another way where you are recording your screen. So if you're doing something that's really technical and you want to demonstrate how to maybe enter data or walk through a program or show the navigation of a system, that can be done through a screencast. And that's a really easy way. And there's even free programs like Screencast-O-Matic is one that I like to use. Doesn't work on the AFNet, but it is a free tool that allows you to screencast and then you can record them. Text. So text is really popular, and I know that a lot of people who are currently converting courses from in-resident to online use a lot of text. It's so easy just to take our study guide workbooks, copy and paste them, and throw them into LMS. However, I will caution you that too much text can be also overwhelming. Remember, you want to find some way to support that text to bring it to life. Also, any slides that you have can also be integrated into your LMS. Try and find ways where you can make your slides more active. There's a lot of programs out there that can make your slides more animated, such as Prezi is one. Canva is another one. Even with PowerPoint, you can make it so that your slides have ways for your students to click on them and they can be interactive. So try and not just put your slides into the LMS, but find a way to make it so the students can engage with it. And George, you make a point. You want to mix your media. So incorporating all of these is a great way. You should have a mix of multiple multimedia within your course to really heighten the engagement of it. So the next part of constructing your course is looking at your content layout. I'm going to throw another question out here. How many of you have gone to a course and you couldn't find anything? Or it would take you probably 8 clicks to get to one document. Give me either a thumbs up or a yes if you've been in a course like that. Because I know I have, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so frustrating. Also, I have ADD. Think about how hard it is for me to focus on a task if I am trying to click all over the place and I don't have something where I can focus. By the time I finally get to the document, I found something else to concentrate on. So don't let your students lose interest in the content if it's so difficult to find that then they're like, I don't even know where this is. Make sure that it is an easy way to navigate. So some things that you want to take into consideration when you start building your course and you start mapping out your content layout. You want to consider the options and limitations of your selected LMS. So, Blackboard is kind of the more commonly known one that a lot of people use. You want to make sure that you understand how your menu works, what options you have in your menu, the functionality of that, the different content containers that you have. I believe Canvas has pages and modules that you can use in their LMS. I'm not as familiar with Moodle, but I believe that they have some of the same types of options. So look at what you can and cannot do in your LMS. Also, consistency in your navigation. Don't make everything different for every lesson. You want to make sure that the students, they're like, okay, so this is the structure for this layout, for this lesson. It's going to be the same in every single lesson. Consistency throughout your course. It should be the same so that students know how to navigate. You want to keep it to 5 to 9 modules. If you have 30 modules in your course and they're all in your menu, it starts to look cluttered. And granted, if you have that many modules because you're trying to reduce the number of clicks, I see that going on in the chat, the 3-click rule. And I'll go more into that here in just a minute. You want to make sure that you don't have so many modules that they become overwhelmed. If you do have a lot of modules, maybe utilize some of your auto-release or archiving mechanisms. In Blackboard, we have adaptive release where certain modules are not opened until they've completed previous modules. You also, when you're developing your content layout, you also want to provide an area for community. And this is a way for your students to interact with one another. So whether that's in a discussion thread that you call the water cooler, or just a place where they can chat or ask questions within one another, you want to have that as a consideration. And again, I put here, determine curriculum containers that best fit your course needs. We talk about breaking your content so you don't have long pages of content where they have to scroll, through several screens. Break it up into, in Blackboard we have something called learning modules where it kind of chunks it and the screens are smaller and they can click through something with a little table that lets them navigate more easily. So consider that as you're going through and you're developing your course. So a couple of other things for course navigation. Consistency is key. I already mentioned that. You want to make sure that you have similar wording, font, and the location for instructions on each page. So when we talk about consistency and layout, that's what we're talking about. So for example, you want to make sure that if Objective 1 or Module 1 has a little schedule at the top and then it has your objectives, you want it to look the same for every single module. So I don't know about you guys, but one of my biggest things is when the fonts in different pages is different sizes. As a student, that annoys me so much. As a developer, that annoys me so much. So I can only imagine if I was a student and I saw that, and I have seen it in some of my classes, and I wanted to go in and fix it. But make sure that everything is the same font, same colors. It helps for consistency and flow. And that's your whole design aspect. The other thing is you want content to be accessible. I've seen a lot about the 3-click rule. The 3-click rule is that you want it to take no more than 3 clicks to get to the content. So reduce the clicks, reduce the number of times that a student has to click on an icon to get to the content. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have to take 10 clicks to get to one document, by that time I'm asleep and I'm totally lost any motivation to try and learn what it is you want me to learn. Also, instructional cues. Do not assume that students know how to do what it is you intend to try and do. You want to make sure that you provide information on what to do and how to do it. So even though it might look like it's obvious that it is a hyperlink for a title, put instructions that say, click on the title to access the content. You cannot assume that students know how to work the learning management system. So you want to provide cues and instructions that direct them on what you want them to do. Also, specify the type of activity, the due date, and the time frame with the use of titles. Provide, maybe whether the title is Objective 2A Threaded Discussion or Objective 2A Progress Check. Use titles that signify what it is that you want them to do or where you want them to go. So that way there's less confusion as they are navigating the course. I provided a few more listed in that in your little study guide or little reading thing that I sent you all, but those are just some main things that you want to keep in mind. Okay, so now you've created your lesson, you have established your, or not your created lesson, you've gotten your course laid out the way you want, you've got your menu situated, you've got a good idea of how the student is going to navigate the course. So what about your specific lessons? Your lessons should follow the suit of consistency. Again, make sure that they all kind of look the same as far as their layout, but you also want to construct patterns in your curriculum. It should be, students should know what to expect for each lesson that they go into. Now, you can change up the types of activities that you do, because it can get monotonous if you're like, okay, overview, reading, thread discussion, quiz. Overview, reading, thread discussion, quiz. Okay, that gets boring. So change up your activities, but at least students will know, okay, well, I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading, or I'm going to have to watch a video, and then I'm going to have some sort of activity that I have to do, and then I'm going to have an assessment. So if it's more generalized, and you can maybe take out an activity or maybe a multimedia lesson, or you can add one, but the general outline for each of your lessons should follow a certain sequence so that students know what to expect as going through it. Because that's one of the things where students can get frustrated, especially in an online environment, in that they're like, oh my gosh, what are they throwing at me now? Man, why is this so different than what we learned before? I don't get it. So you want to make sure that they know what to expect when they're going into something. The other part with that, and I didn't really mention it at the beginning, is by having an outline and some sort of schedule up front, it'll also give them an idea of how the course is going to be laid out. And you can actually utilize that organization and your plan that can be transferred into a syllabus easily. So when you're creating that outline, it can serve multiple purposes. That's why it's so important. So you want to really make sure that you strategically organize and present all your course content to leverage the learner's existing expertise. So when you're creating a lesson, especially if you're taking this from an in-resident course, think about how you would teach it in the classroom. And then take that knowledge and knowing how you would teach in a classroom and then transfer that into the online. Okay, well, think about how you can utilize your tools and different things that are out there to do the things that you would do in an in-resident classroom. I like this picture here because it shows her on video using a whiteboard. Okay, so if you're doing mathematical equations in the classroom where you need to show formulas and you need to write things out for students as part of the lesson, there are still ways to do that in the online environment. Ms. Hall's talked about the different Web 2.0 tools. We have whiteboards and Collaborate, and most video teleconferencing tools do. Or just like in this picture, you can video yourself doing the equations. There's so many different tools, and out there that are available and free. Actually, in your guide, I included a list of free Web 2.0 tools that are out there. So the possibilities online are actually more vast than when we're in resident, because we have the wide web at our fingertips to provide us with all of these great possibilities for demonstrating our lesson to our students. So as you go into this, really start being creative and innovative with how you are teaching and delivering the material to students. That's why I say, at the beginning of creating a course, we provide some things like video and screencasts and slides and text. Don't just stick to text. Don't just try and give them everything in reading. Try and think about how different people learn and give it to them different ways. And then that way you're creating an environment that is not only accessible, it's also engaging and collaborative and active. We talk about active learning a lot, especially in the technical training environment right now. You can still have active learning. There are so many ways to still do that online. It's not just an in-resident thing. So George brought up a great thing, multimedia. That's the key phrase there, multi. Use many different things, and that way it's going to keep it interesting. So I actually have that in here about the integration of media and technology, because the thing that it can do is it can introduce and guide main concepts. If you look at, Gagne's 9 steps, the first thing is in that introduction and that motivation step. You want them to be excited to learn. So how are you going to do that? Whether it's through a video or whether it's through a activity, there are so many different ways that you can introduce that topic and get them excited. Because I know for me, if you're just throwing some text at me, I'm going to be like, okay, where's the activity? Let me just jump to that. That's all I'm going to do. So you want to look at different things on integrating it into the course. That's why discussions are fun too, because it uses that prior knowledge. So if students have experiences, you can start, leveraging that and having them bring it to the table. It generates interest on the subject. You can reinforce confusing or complex ideas. So when you use media, you can actually expand on the content. Some people are visual learners like myself. So if you have text and then you have a picture or a video that enhances that, then it's going to help students have a broader understanding of the topic. You can also set the stage for an activity. So one thing I like to do is I might have a video just by itself and say, okay, watch this video. Well, then later in the lesson, I might have the same video with some questions. Or you can have a video demonstrating an activity, where it's someone actually doing it. Maybe it's a video of someone changing a tire, or maybe it's a video of someone painting something or someone demonstrating a tool. Well, then guess what? Then you have the students do the same thing. Obviously, they can't change a tire online, but you can have them video themselves changing a tire and then post their video. Or you can have a video of 2 people, of a supervisor counseling someone, and then you can have them do the same thing where they are going to actively go through the process of counseling someone else. That's something that we do in BIC. All right, so that's pretty much, it as far as the lesson. You really want to look at how you can leverage all of the things that are available to you to recreate a lesson the way that you would in the classroom. So today we've gone over a lot of different things. We've gone over our course planning, which is making sure that you want to outline everything prior. You want to have that framework. Well, you want to know what it is that your course is going to, what are the goals of your course? How is it going to serve or service the overall goals of the mission, of the organization, of the career field? How are what's your framework going to look like? What is everything going to look at overall? So, and then when you get into constructing, make sure that you look at your layout, that user-friendly, that it's easy to navigate, and it doesn't frustrate your students. And then with your lesson, think about how you would create what you do in the classroom in the online environment, utilizing the vast amount of tools that are out there. So does anyone have any, we have some time left, about 10 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? I went through this a lot faster than I thought I was going to. So, but since we don't have very many questions, I also want you all to remember that if you want more of this, faculty development does offer several courses that talk about specifically developing and facilitating for online learning and thinking about the possibilities. So we have the EIDL course, which I mentioned quite a bit, which is the instructor developer of online learning, and that's an intense 10-day course that takes you through the process of taking your in-resident course or even a new course, or an idea for a course, and planning and outlining like we talked about in here and preparing it for the online environment. So it doesn't actually get you into the development within a learning management system, but it helps you prepare for the development. And sneak peek of this is that we are in the process of developing a course called OTD, which is online training development, which will be exactly that. It'll be focusing on the development of a course in a learning management system. So be on the lookout for that. So the analysis of learning is a course that takes you through the process of looking at existing courses and seeing if their current method of delivery is actually the right method of delivery. So it helps you analyze your course based on your objectives to determine whether it is right for online learning, whether it's best for blended, or if in-resident training is the best method for them. And then finally, the application of instructional systems development is your basic ISD course. It takes you through ADDIE and teaches you the basic instructional system process for course development. And that's your objective writing, assessment writing, all of that if you're new to the course development arena. So then of course I have to showcase our brand new website. So if you are interested in these courses, or if you would like to sign up for our upcoming professional development webinar, we have one next week on asynchronous facilitation, or basically facilitating a threaded discussion. If you go to our website under PD events, you'll see the calendar for our upcoming sessions where you can actually register for those if you haven't done it yet. We also have all the information and schedules for all of our formal courses on there. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. Really awesome session. I'm hoping that you got at least some nuggets of information from this, and thank you, Frank and Brittany, for the moderation. Does anyone have any questions for me? I see a couple people have left. I see a couple great comments here. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the information.